Welcome back to Real Talk Fitness, the podcast where you go deeper than the reps, the calories, and the surface level stuff. Because real change doesn't start in the gym, it starts in your mind. I'm your host, Ashley Cummins, and each week we talk about the messy middle of growth, the mindset shifts, the emotional work, and the moments that actually build resilience. So if you're ready to stop running from yourself and start understanding yourself, this one's for you. This episode comes to me from thinking a lot lately about the kind of mirror we choose to look into. I really look forward to diving into this episode. So let's get started. Most of us spend years staring into a mirror that shows us how we look, how we appear to others, how we measure up, and how we're being perceived. But very few of us stop to look into the mirror that shows us who we are. That mirror, that one that reflects our patterns, our reactions, our emotions, and our story. And it is called the mirror of self-awareness. It's the most confronting mirror you'll ever face, but it's also the most freeing. This year, since studying my life coaching and helping others realize patterns and speak to them about the pillars of change and growth, their beliefs, their values, it's really brought my attention to how many people are so not aware of who they actually are. And it's confronting. But the truth is, you can't change what you don't see. And if you're stuck in a cycle of self-consciousness or worrying about what people think, replaying moments, overanalyzing every choice, you'll stay stuck in performance mode instead of your growth. And that's why in today's episode, we're unpacking the difference between being self-aware and being self-conscious. I follow a lot of people and read a lot of books. I think it's really important to what you listen to and what you read. It's food for our mind. And Rob Dial's episode from The Mindset Mentor really sparked my inspiration to really write into this. And it's a really simple concept, but when you really understand it, it can change the way you approach your body, your mindset, and your life. So many people describe to me, I've just hit a wall, or people tell me that they feel stuck. What I often see with that, especially with a lot of my life coaching study, it isn't a lack of motivation, it's a lack of awareness. What's really going on? Because when you're unaware, you're running on autopilot. We keep doing the same things, telling ourselves the same story, and repeating the same emotions, but expecting a different result. And that's where self-consciousness can disguise itself as a reflection. You think you're being reflective, but really you're just judging yourself from the outside, right? You're watching the version of you don't like and trying to fix her, instead of getting curious about why is she there in the first place. Self-consciousness sounds like everyone noticed that I messed up. I should have done better. They probably think that I've failed. But self-awareness is that moment that triggered something. What belief did it touch? What emotion was underneath my reaction? What patterns do I keep repeating here? One keeps you trapped in guilt, and the other opens a door for change. Now, I always say to people, awareness is the foundation of change and growth, because you can't heal what you don't acknowledge. And this is so deep for me. Over the last 24 months, doing so much self-development work as a business owner and as a mum, and as somebody that wants to compete in sports, I really divide my brain into so many different avenues. And I often find myself in that self-consciousness that I didn't do enough or I could have done better. And that moment 2 years ago when I stepped into self-awareness, and I always ask people, do you journal? And they look at me funny. And this is something that I'll harp on time and time and time again. For over 3 years now, I've been journaling my inner thoughts and getting them out on paper to stop this self-conscious cycle and to start to become self-aware. Think about it like this. When you start a fitness journey, the first thing you do is assess where you're at. You either step on the scales, you take progress photos, you track your lifts. That's awareness. It's data, it's honesty, and it's clarity. Journaling for your mindset and who you are and why you keep doing what you're doing is the same thing. And without that, you have no direction because you're just guessing. And this applies internally on our thoughts, our patterns, and what keeps us in the same circle. When you start to see your thought patterns, when you notice I eat when I'm anxious or I procrastinate when I feel not good enough, that's your internal progress. Just being aware of that and getting it out on paper, that's where the real change begins. Because awareness doesn't just show you what needs to change, it shows you why you've been doing it in the first place. When you understand the why, you don't have to fight yourself anymore. You can finally work with yourself. And this is where most people get it wrong, right? They become aware of something and immediately go into judgment. I know I overthink. I know I sabotage. I know I shut down. And then they shame themselves over it. That's not awareness. You're being self-conscious again, and you're just disguising it as I'm aware of all these things. Awareness says, I see this part of me, but I want to understand her. It's gentle and it's curious. And if you've ever listened to Rob Dial, he talks about this too, how self-awareness should never turn into judgment, because once it does, you stop learning. Every moment you catch yourself spiraling, every time you notice an old habit creeping in, that's not failure. That's a window into understanding yourself better. And change doesn't come from hating the version of you that made mistakes. It comes from learning why she showed up and choosing differently next time. You're probably thinking, how does awareness transform my journey? When you start to live with awareness, everything begins to change. Not overnight, but subtly, deeply, and consistently. You start to pause before reacting. You begin to notice your triggers instead of becoming them. You stop looking for external validation and start creating internal safety. You become the observer of your thoughts, not the prisoner of them. One big statement that I have been journaling myself lately is, you are not your thoughts. You are the thinker of them. Your brain is the machine and we are the operator. This is a huge one. I often get stuck in my thoughts, especially with business, dealing with a lot of different personalities, and always being my own worst self-critic in terms of thinking these thoughts and then overthinking them and spiraling. The moment I took ownership of going and questioning if these thoughts are valid, is this thought true? Can I validate it? And the moment I paused to realize that some of these thoughts, I actually can't validate them. So I stopped thinking them because I am not my thoughts. And this is what transformation actually looks like. For us, our mind, it's not a before and after photo. It's a small gap between the trigger and your response, where you finally get to choose differently. That gap is freedom. That gap is awareness. And that's where lasting change lives. There's ways that you can start to build awareness. Ask better questions. Instead of, why do I keep doing this? Ask, what am I feeling right before I do this? Journal, journal, journal. Write like no one will ever read it. Forget spelling, forget structure, just get it out. Notice your body. Your body often knows before your mind does. Tight chest, heavy stomach, clenched jaw. Those sensations are signals. Listen to them. Catch your shoulds. Tony Robbins always says, never use the word should, because you're shoulding all over yourself. Every time I hear I should, pause, ask, is this my voice or someone else's expectation? Because in life, you shouldn't do anything. Celebrating and noticing, even if you don't change the behavior, celebrate the fact that you've noticed. That's progress. Awareness is the beginning of every transformation. It's what turns unconscious patterns into conscious choices. When you become aware, you start reclaiming your power. You start seeing yourself not as broken, but as learning. So next time you catch yourself overthinking, judging, or comparing, take a breath. Is this me being self-aware or self-conscious? If you're being self-conscious, drop your judgment. Start being curious, because the goal isn't to be perfect. The goal is to be present enough to grow. And maybe tonight, when you catch your reflection, look at yourself a little differently. Not to judge, not to criticize, but to say, I'm starting to see you and really see you. That's where change begins. Nobody is perfect. Not everybody is willing enough to become self-aware, and that is okay. There's something else that I've learned is that in life, you will encounter people that are arrogant, rude, jealous, mean, not understanding, and that is okay. But if you're open to it, start changing by becoming self-aware. Who am I? Who do I want to be? Am I being self-aware of my behavior, or am I just self-conscious of my behavior? How can I start to change to be the person that I want to be? Why do I keep doing these patterns? So change begins not in perfection, but in awareness. And that's a wrap for today's episode. So thanks for tuning in to Real Talk Fitness, the place where we strip back the noise and talk about what really creates change. And if this episode hit home, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Tag me so I can see what landed for you, because these conversations are how we grow together. And remember, your body follows your mind. So keep doing the inner work, keep showing up, and keep choosing awareness over perfection. You're not behind, you're becoming.